So yeah, so that window of tolerance, that stasis band, right? If we spike up into that hyperarousal, that activation mode of having all of those big feelings, or we collapse down into that hypoarousal of just conservation mode, and everything is just hard and slow and blah, right? So our goal then is to stay right squarely within our window of tolerance.
Hey everybody, my name is Dr. Kristen Donnelly, and I am one of the good doctors of Abbey Research. At Abbey Research, we believe that curiosity can change the world because it's actually the only thing that ever has. We have evolved and pushed forward as a human race by people saying, what if it could be different? What if this one thing would work differently? What if what we think is normal isn't? What does this taste like? All of those kind of things. What's over that mountain? All of those things. And so we want to help humanity move forward. And so this series is in service of that idea. It's called Welcome to My World. And I get the incredible privilege to chat to interesting folks from all over the world who are different than me, which is literally every person, about something that they know and they can hold to, that if we knew about it, the rest of us could see through their eyes for 20 minutes. Our human experience would be richer. And today's guest is absolutely no exception. I met Aurora J. Miller on Clubhouse, an age ago, or probably 3 days. Who knows? What does time mean? I've been in a lot of rooms where she's been on the stage talking. And one of the things that I was really impressed with is that Aurora is a resilience educator. And resilience is such a buzzword, just like empathy is, that it's like you kind of listen a little bit closer and you say, what do they mean by that? And Aurora has this incredible concept about whelmed as a word. And whenever she says it, I'll be honest, guys, I think about that joke from 10 Things I Hate About You, where I'm like, can you be overwhelmed or under? I think you can in Europe. So Aurora is going to talk to us about how you can be whelmed, not just in Europe, and figure out what's going on. The car company is called Systemic Evolutions, and all of her contact details are going to be below. Aurora, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Kristen. And what a fun introduction. I appreciate that.
I'm doing my best. So let's get into it, because as soon as I heard you articulate this, I DM'd you immediately and I was like, I need to talk about this on the show. So talk to me about what the hell get whelmed means.
Well, honestly, it comes from exactly the quote that you were referencing. You can be overwhelmed or you can be underwhelmed, but can you ever just be whelmed? And I would posit, yes, you can. For me, I got into this because of stress. I was doing a bunch of studying about why I was struggling in my life, why my friends were struggling, why so much is going wrong in our society. And the answer came back with, it's a lot about stress. Because of the way that stress impacts our bodies and our brains, it's really difficult to function effectively when we're stressed out. We have, lowered critical thinking skills and empathy, and our ability to identify what we should be afraid of and what we shouldn't be afraid of. All of this goes out the window when we're in times of high stress. So when we talk about being overwhelmed, well, we know that that's a stressful feeling, that like heart racing and hands shaking and palms sweating and I can't even think and blah, right? That overwhelmed feeling. On the flip side, underwhelmed is still a stress response. That feeling of, I have no motivation, I have no desire, I have no energy, I can't get off the couch. That's what's called hypoarousal, as opposed to the hyperarousal, which is the overwhelm. And so my goal is to help people not be overwhelmed, not be underwhelmed, just be whelmed. Feel happy and confident and capable and empowered to live the life that you want to live.
I love it. So it's like keeping us within the band of stasis. So like nothing's an over or an under reaction. Everything is just a reaction.
Exactly. And Dr. Dan Siegel from UCLA uses the window of tolerance model. So as you're talking about a band, that's exactly right. When we're in our window of tolerance, we're golden, right? And we might have a little bit of fluctuation, but we don't feel out of control.
However, and isn't that so much the thing, is whether we feel like we're in control or not?
Exactly. Whether we're in control, whether we feel powerless, because powerlessness is so impactful to our stress response. Our nervous system is just going to have a flare up anytime it gets the sense that we can't control our environment, our relationships, our life choices, all of these kinds of things. So so that window of tolerance, that stasis band, right? If we spike up into that hyperarousal, that activation mode of having all of those big feelings, or we collapse down into that hypoarousal of just conservation mode, and everything is just hard and slow and blah, right? So our goal then is to stay right squarely within our window of tolerance. And what was really interesting to me was recognizing that our window of tolerance can broaden or it can shrink depending on what's going on in our bodies, in our life, in our relationships, right? We have more resilience or we have less resilience. So if we're chronically sleep deprived, we know we'll have a narrower window of tolerance versus, if we're getting all of our nutrition and our exercise and having really strong relationships, like our window of tolerance, probably nothing is going to knock us off our game for a while.
I have so many thoughts on this. I think, because how many times in our lives have you thought, maybe it's just me, but it's like, this shouldn't be this big of a deal. Like, why am I reacting? This feels disproportionate. Like, why can't I? And it's because that literally just happened to me a couple months ago. And I kept looking at Erin and saying like, this shouldn't be this big of a deal. And she was like, you're not over or under reacting. You're reacting because as a human, that's all you're doing. Right. Which is really interesting to think about when you're talking about the hypo and hyper. But I think the question that comes to mind immediately is that this is a lot of research that you've done, and this is a lot of stuff. Why, talk me through the journey to becoming a resilience educator beyond just I was stressed, because I have been stressed my whole life. And I have never thought, you know what I should do? I should read books by smart people from UCLA and build a whole business around it. So walk me through your journey here.
So it's actually really, really interesting. So first of all, I come from a family of scientists. All right. So we would talk about anthropology, archaeology, biology, like all of these things over the dinner table. Right. So there's a lot of privilege there that I 100% have to own, especially around feeling like this information is really accessible to me, which is part of why I want to turn around and make it accessible to other people. Add to that chronic PTSD, right? So from a child having lots of little traumas or big traumas, but just a life colored by trauma that as an adult showed up as really intense depressive periods, lots of big panicky moments, not having any tools or understanding of what was happening or why, feeling very much out of control of my life because my body would just hijack my brain. So even when I was like, I really want to get up and make a really lovely dinner, that would feel really good, my body was like, nope, you're gonna stay in bed. And that's a bummer, right? Like, I'm somebody, I love joy. I want to share joy. I want to experience joy. Like, that's what I'm about. So to have these periods of just completely incapable was really tough. Fortunately, I found an awesome therapist, lots of great EMDR, which was wonderful. And that's when I started to recognize between EMDR and somatics, the relationship between my brain and my body.
Right.
And how recognizing what I'm feeling, observing that is the first step to having control over that.
Okay.
Tangentially, I was in video game development as a designer and producer.
Oh my gosh, my husband was in QA in video games for years. Yeah.
Well,
he was at Vivendi and Activision and Microsoft.
Oh yeah. So I was at Jamdat, which got bought out by EA and then moved to Sega and then was done. And that's a longer story that I won't talk about probably in public. But
he's the same. He's like, I'll give you the highlights, but the details are for the pub. Yeah. So that's
yeah, exactly. And so when virtual reality came out, I was like, ooh, this is a big deal. And I found myself in a situation to start learning about how virtual reality works and how our brains internalize data from VR differently from any other kind of content that we consume. And that was fascinating to me. And there's not a lot of like concrete facts about this yet. It's still super, super early days in terms of research, but it's really fascinating to me. And so at various times, I was like, I kind of want to learn more about neuroscience, but I didn't do very well at science in college. I flunked all of my labs because I spent too much time in the theater. So I was like, I don't know that I could really like do a science thing. So I talked to my sister, the doctor. That's how I refer to her, my sister, the doctor. And she said, well, maybe, take some classes at the local community college, just get back into science, see how that feels. And they had an interpersonal neurobiology certification course. And I was like, what? And it wasn't for credit. It was like a continuing education thing for people who do service, like therapists and things like that. And I was like, this is amazing. So it was neuroscience and psychology, somatics, all of these different components rolled up together, dealing with attachment and trauma and polyvagal theory, which is a lot of that hypoarousal, like understanding how that physically works in our bodies, the different structures of the brain and the, how the stress response is activated. And that was really the linchpin that set me off, like massively consuming everything that I could get my hands on.
Yeah, I think so. Like I come at this from the social science perspective almost exclusively. So like I love meeting folks like you that can tell me how the brain works, but I'm not like, what I should do is do a course. I'm a little bit more interested in then what that does to our bodies and how we interact with other humans. Totally. But it's so symbiotic. And it's one of the, like, as we're sitting here talking, I'm like, darn academia for making all of us be siloed. And we can't all talk to each other and figure this kind of thing out, because your work segues directly into mine and mine segues directly into yours. And we're never taught to be together, which is just so damn frustrating. So
it's really frustrating. And just side note, like my mom was getting her PhD in systems theory when I was like so systems thinking has been a part of everything in my life. And silos are just the absolute worst. So that's why, like, I study permaculture and I study interpersonal neurobiology and I study, all of these different components, because we are systems living in systems. And if we don't understand it holographically, we're never really going to be able to solve these problems.
Yeah, we were having a conversation, Erin and I, about a show that we were watching. And we were saying, like, this one person that was talking to us about it was really, really focused on the person within it because of their particular training and their particular worldview. And we were like, right, but we can never look at an individual and not see the spider web out from them. Like, I can never see them as a disconnected entity. And we forget what a both burden and privilege that is to have this kind of training. Yeah. That sometimes I do wish I could turn off and just be like, could I just enjoy this movie without thinking about the, sociocultural ramifications? No, this is my curse. So as you are voraciously consuming all of this, you open a coaching practice?
Yeah. So, so I worked for a company that was literally making virtual reality for mindfulness development.
Okay.
Which was really very, very cool. And I loved everything that we were doing, and the research that was, contributing to this was wonderful. What I saw was that it really helped manage the symptoms, but didn't address the root causes. And that's not a slam on the company or the product in any way.
No, it's just everybody has limitations. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But what it does, it's really good at. So I wanted to be able to dig deeper with people. And I recognized that my happiest times in my life were when I was talking with people one-on-one about how to make their life less miserable and more joyful. So I wanted to do that like all the time.
I love it.
And that's what I do now.
So what kind of, I mean, like, this is hard because I kind of know the answer to this, but I'm assuming that you work mostly with people who have kind of hit a crisis point and need a way to, like, you're almost crisis management at the beginning of your relationship with them.
Yeah, but not necessarily. I mean, okay, so another tangent. A few years ago, I wrote a book called Butterfly Soup, A Guide to Changing Your Life. Okay. And it outlines change management in the context of a caterpillar's metamorphosis into a butterfly.
Okay.
The first step of change is always recognizing that a change needs to happen. Something doesn't work and needs to be addressed. Now, that could be like super crisis, like I'm not functional and I'm not okay. Or it could be, gosh, I feel like there's something more. And I'd like to find out what that something more is. I'm actually applying that now into my practice in some new and interesting ways. So I'm excited about that for systemic evolutions and up-leveling your life. Little teaser there. But yeah, so it might be, I am struggling with anxiety every day of my life. I can barely get out of bed because of depression. I can't maintain solid relationships because I'm just in this constant state of overwhelm, and I can't figure out how to communicate with the people in my life that I care about. It could be that, or it could be, you know, again, a little bit less intense. Gosh, you know, I recognize that the stress that I'm feeling is really hard on my body, and I just need some tools to alleviate that so that I'm not damaging my organs from these constant upswells of stress.
And then, I mean, it's the purpose of coaching is like, it's all individual, right? And so then you kind of get to walk with people. Yeah. So what has surprised you the most about this work?
All right, I'm just going to be honest. What has surprised me is how difficult it is to let go of the stress monster, that we culturally are so attached to the ways in which stress forms our persona, our identity, our well-being. Like, being stressed out is a badge of honor. Gosh, you know, I only got 4 hours of sleep last night because I've had so much to do because I'm so important and all of these kinds of things.
Yeah, because we've assigned productivity a moral value.
Yes. Yes. And our self-worth often is defined by our productivity. So taking a day off feels like being a failure for a lot of people, which is heartbreaking because our bodies need downtime and our brains need downtime in order to be more productive. Yeah. So we're actually losing so much productivity because we won't give ourselves the downtime that we need.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the things we talk about a lot around here, is that the puritanical theological system that America was formed under, regardless of whether we want it or not. And there's other countries that have this, but like America has it just so well. And then we export it. And so it becomes hard to tell like what is us and what is them on some level. Because my Canadian friends will be like, we have that too. I'm like, yeah, but I think we gave it to you. Like, I think we gave it to you.
Yes. And there certainly was some very early puritanical settlement in Canada as well. So Canada, maybe not the best example of that, But like England or France or Italy, some of these places where historically they've had really great models for having plenty of downtime. In France, I believe it was a law, I hope it still is, that employers can't contact their employees after working hours, period. Can't email, can't text. How glorious is that? But as we continue to see these ebbs and flows of political affiliation, then some of that starts to fall away. And how much of that is a result of the American media influencing other countries?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. So like the reason I say Canada is because that at some point, because Canada was part of and is part of the Commonwealth, there was a state church. And so there was another cultural force that was unifying. And so my argument with America is that the only cultural force that was ever unifying was puritanical theology, and we didn't even realize it.
Yeah, no, that's super fair, actually.
And so like we never had anything to bounce against it. And it was always normal, like immediately. And so that's what I mean. Like, I think Canada could have leaned away from the garbage pretty easily, and we kind of exported the garbage north. And so, I mean, Spain and what's the joke that's going around right now? You get an out of office from someone in Europe that's like, I'm on vacation, I'll see you in 2027. And you get one from America and it's like, I'm getting my kidney removed, I'll be back to you as soon as the anesthesia wears off. So it's very, very true. So I think we can talk about pragmatic tips and everything else, but I think one of the things that I would encourage people to do is, if any of this has resonated with you, get in touch with Aurora directly, because something that I've learned in my own life and with Aaron, and then also in listening to people like Aurora and Jennifer Bassman, who's been on the channel before, is that it is a deeply personal journey to wrestle this monster. And we can give you all of the data, but to work with somebody to do it is the best way to really get a grapple around it, whether that's a professional therapist, whether that's a coach, whether that's a friend that you really trust. It's probably actually all of the above, as we constantly wrestle with this in different seasons.
It absolutely is all of the above. We have to have all of these different voices coming in to support our change, because we have so many different voices in our heads already telling us how we're bad and wrong, all of the puritanical stuff that is just deeply conditioned within us. And so as a coach, a lot of what I do is help people see what are the stories that they're telling themselves that aren't actually based in reality, but are so ingrained that we can't even see them. And I do it too. We all do it. Like, that's a natural thing that we do. So we all need people outside of us saying, hey, is that a story, or is there actually evidence to support that?
Yeah. Is this truth or just your truth?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to hit pause on this because I want to be conscious of time, but Aurora, I could keep talking to you forever. So maybe we'll just have to do it on Clubhouse again soon. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a delight. Pals, if you liked the conversation, hit that thumbs up on the YouTube, because then the algorithm will tell more people about it and we can kind of spread it all good. We're all at mercies of algorithms, whether we want to be or not. Speaking of algorithms, if you subscribe to the channel, you won't miss a single one of these. Not only do we have this series here at Abbey Research, which comes out every Saturday, we've got lots of other content about seeing the world just a little bit differently, unlearning what we thought, relearning it in deeper ways, and having more understanding of ourselves and the world around us. My name is Dr. Kristen Donnelly. This is Welcome to My World. My guest this week has been Aurora J. Miller. You can find all of her contact details in the show notes below. It's been a pleasure spending our time with you. Thank you for giving us some of yours, and I'll see you next time. Bye.